Hello, everybody. This is Sabrina Pena Young. I am coming in from Buffalo, New York, and I was asked to do a presentation on audio editing for film for the Buffalo Movie and Video Makers group for this upcoming Monday. So I am going to do a combination of screen capture and Logic. This is Logic. You can use other programs, Audacity, Pro Tools. There's a lot of different programs you can use. I use Logic because I'm a Mac person. I'm a composer. I've been writing music probably for a couple decades now. I write anything from a string quartet to film music to choir music to video game music to really crazy stuff that no one in their right mind should listen to. But Google me and you'll find me. Anyway, so today we're just talking about really basic audio editing. This is for filmmakers, for people doing webisodes, for anyone that deals in media and visuals and needs to do some sound editing with it. I've got my outline of what I'm going to cover here on the side, so that way you guys can kind of just check it out. So one of the first things that we're going to talk about, and like I said, this is very basic, is just levels. Okay, so for example, I have a mic here, and if you watch, this is not going to be the greatest audio, but if you watch, you'll see that as I'm talking, there's all these lines, right? There's green, there's yellow, and there's red. There's red. So what you want to do when you're recording is you want to avoid the red. Ideally, you want to keep it in the yellow, but once you get past the red, what happens is something called clipping, and I'll just show you what happens right here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to enable this. I'm going to record, and we're just going to do some testing. So test, 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 test. Okay. So if you notice here, there are various sounds here, and I'll play it back in the test, 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 test. Okay, right here, there, and even in this one too. If you look very closely here, you'll see that it's clipped, it's cut it. Now, when we used to do cassette tapes back in the day, what happened was that it would just kind of have a funky sound, but it wasn't a big deal. Because this is digital, essentially you are losing information, and I won't go too much into all the details of that, but you're losing valuable information. You're losing actual audio, and there's no way to get that back. It sounds funky, it sounds unprofessional, it sounds amateur. So when you're mixing, you want to keep it in the green or yellow. You also have the problem that if you have like a section like this, or even this, okay, if you are recording and you see that everything is this small, this is just visuals. I'm going with visuals because we're filmmakers, right? You look at this, it's this small, you've got a problem. Because to make this loud enough to equal everything else in your film, you're going to have to jack up the sound so loud that all the crap that's going on in the background, that's air conditioning noise, that's somebody breathing, that's saliva, like saliva's nasty, like saliva's gross. Okay, rustling, feet shuffling, the weirdest things that you did not think ever had sound is really going to be pumped up when you have to, have it up. So I would suggest, try to keep it no smaller than this, and definitely do not clip. Ideally, you should be able to get it where it's almost to the edges, but not quite there. For, regular to louder speaking voices. So that's one thing to avoid. This is called distortion, and you do not want to do digital distortion. It was cool in the analog days. It's now uncool and just unprofessional in general. So that's our first example there. Okay. Now, another example, a lot of people have a tendency to go, hey, I'll fix it in post. Okay. There are some things you can fix in post. For example, if I'm talking, right? What's up? I love pizza. This little, like, you can actually sit down That's the clap right there. You can just kind of cut it out. Okay, so you can just split it right there. Okay, and you can do that, and bam, it's gone. What's up? I love pizza. So that's doable. Now, on the other hand, if I'm talking and there's noise going on meanwhile, hey there, I really love eating pizza. Pizza is like the best stuff in the whole wide freaking universe. Pizza, 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 pizza. I love pizza. You can just see there, this is going to be impossible to cut. Okay? And you can hear it when I play it back, which I'll play it back now. There. I really love eating pizza. Pizza is like the best stuff in the whole wide freaking universe. There is no way to split that up. That's a really obvious example. Less obvious examples are when your lead is talking and in the background somebody drops something, sneezes, coughs, a dog barks, airplane goes by, car goes by. There's some things that we can do on our end. Like for instance, regarding frequency, like, if somebody's voice is like way up here and the sound that's annoying is down there is a way to split up the frequencies. So that way anything that's below a certain hertz is kicked out entirely and cut and your actor's voice is kept. However, when you do that, sometimes some of the warmth of their voice disappears and they sound a little tinny. So ideally, your audio that you have in your filmmaking needs to be almost perfect, minus of course dialogue is going to be messed up or whatever, but try to assume that the person that's going to be doing your editing for sound is just adding stuff like reverb and getting rid of some extraneous stuff. There's a line that was messed up, so you need to cut that together to make a better line. Don't assume that they can work miracles. Most of them can. I know I can. I've done some pretty crazy stuff. When I did my film Libertaria, I had 1,000 vocal tracks. I did a lot of nitpicky, crazy editing that it was insane. Okay, so it is possible to do, especially once again, if there's an issue that the sound, especially let's say a car goes by and the person's a female that's speaking, it's probably going to be pretty easy to get that out of there, even if there's an overlap. But if it's a dog barking and it's a male speaking at the same time, believe it or not, they might have the same frequency and it might be hard to separate the two sounds. Point is, avoid extra noise if you can help it, especially avoid overlapping noise, or if you have to, let the car pass, then continue the dialogue. Let the dog finish its barking, it'll finish eventually, then continue your talking. Another issue that comes up is when you have dialogue and music competing with each other. Or sound effects even. So a person's talking and in the background you have lots of music playing at the same time. So now we're going to talk about effects. This is a shorter presentation, which is why I'm kind of going through these pretty quickly. So we have, I'm just going to record some audio. I don't know. I'll record something from my latest film. Okay. This has been Lifeline with Mario DeSantis. As you can see, remember I was talking about it, this is not bad. We could play with this, and we're going to play with this. We're going to keep using this track over and over again. The first things I do is I just get rid of the extraneous stuff right off the bat, because who needs it, right? And the extraneous stuff you could tell because it's pretty much, it's a line, it's silence, there's nothing there. So this is pretty dry right now, okay? And we'll play it. This has been Lifeline with Mario DeSantis. Really dry. By dry, I mean there are no effects on it. It's raw. Nothing's been added to it or changed. So this is a deal. If you're not the sound person that's going to be doing post, just leave it dry. Leave it raw. Don't add anything. Don't say, oh, I'm going to add a little bit of reverb or whatever. I'm going to add a little echo. I'm going to do this and that and the other. You want to record it as clean as possible. That means no extra sounds, no distortion, no effects, because it's your person in post that's going to do all that stuff, because they're going to be able to make changes digitally that they can't make once you make the changes in the first place. Okay. So here we go. We're going to start with reverb. Now, reverb is pretty easy. Okay. Depending on your program, I use Final Cut. Final Cut and Logic are integrated with each other. That means that I can access anything from there. So, And then in here, in this menu, you would go over here and you have spaces. They call it spaces here. Okay. And so it was very simple. You just kind of add, whatever sounds you want to it. But not every program is going to look the same. You might use iMovie, Windows Movie Maker, was it Vega, Sony Vega, whatever. Whatever you use. Okay. They're going to look similar. This is an audio program I'm using right now. But it'll be very similar. Okay. So we're going to add some reverb. Okay. So here we go. Let's add some reverb. We'll do a very basic. Let's go with that one, I guess. All right. If you're new to this, I suggest just go with presets and then tweak. If you've done this for years like me, you know exactly what you need to do with all these parameters. It looks kind of scary. But the nice thing is you can just sit down and go, oh, never mind. I just want, a church. Almost all of them have a church, right? So we'll have the church. Dry means there's no effect. Wet means it's super affected. We're going to go crazy with that. And then, okay.
This has been Lifeline with Mario DeSantis.
So that's a very heavy reverb. What it does is it creates a space for you. If you listen to it without the sound, you can tell that it was just recorded in a room. If you do it with the reverb, you could tell it sounds like it's in a place. It might call it reverb. It might call it spaces. They give you options, everything from a church that has a lot of reverb. That means the sound is just echoing, moving around you a lot, to something that is, maybe they call it, a small room. So it sounds very tight. And so play with those. I would say play with the presets first. And then if you're really ambitious, then look into what all these parameters mean. Okay. Dry and wet are important if you have those parameters, but not all of them will. It just means that, how much of the original signal is in there and how much of the signal is affected. Okay. All right. So that's the first one. So another effect you probably will be using is called panning. What panning means is, and you'll see it under stereo. It means left or right, or if you have 5.1 surround sound, you have 6 different options. Yes, 6, not 5. Or maybe you have 7 options. Or if you are lucky enough to do an IMAX movie, by the way, I'm jealous of you if you are, you have so many options. Okay. It just means if it's left or right. And very basically, what you want to do is have your sound, you can hear my dog in the back, have your sound show up where you have your character. So if the person's on the left, you want the sound to come from the left. If the person's on the right, you want the sound to come from the right. If the person is in front, they sound louder. If the person's in the back, they sound farther away. It's very basic. It's very simple, but it actually will help your film sound a little bit more authentic and also sound a little more real, and professional. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to do, this here is a dial for left and right. You probably will just have a bar that just says left, right. That's all it's going to have. See, like here, I have a pan. This is making it all the way left and all the way right. So what I'm going to do is I am going to actually record some changing with left and right so you guys can hear it, and that'll be your sample.
This has been Lifeline with Mario DeSantis. This has been Lifeline with
Santos.
Mario DeSantis.
Santos. Anyway. Okay, so what happens here is that you'll be able to see, you'll be able to hear that the audio is moving and you see the dial is moving. Your program probably won't do as much. You set keyframes probably in yours. But adding the panning is great. And between adding that and the reverb, the correct reverb, make sure that the reverb matches the space, will be a couple of ways that you can actually help with things. One more thing I'll talk about is volume. As I mentioned before, obviously if somebody's close to the camera or whatever, they're louder than somebody who's yelling all the way in the back. And for the very basic audio editor that's brand new to everything, you're going to use just use volume. That's very basic. Normally I use compression, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. I did pretty decent levels here, so that's pretty good. But let's say you didn't. Okay, you're going to add something called compression. And what it does, essentially, it affects the volume, let's say, the gain, the output of your signal. It will make it louder. It will make it softer. It will take everything and kind of, you can put parameters to get rid of some of the noise you don't want, and then emphasize the noise that you do want. Once again, this is a very basic beginning to this. I suggest that if you want to really pursue sound editing, you look into compression. There's a really great there's great online courses on audio editing and things like that you could take, or books if you want to do books. I prefer the YouTube videos and stuff. But so once again, we're going to use compression, and it'll look different everywhere, but it will be called compression in like, for instance, in Final Cut. You go over here and you should just be able to, okay, whoops. There's compress. As you can see, I already have a bunch of presets that I have for compression. Okay, but there's my compressor right there, and it gives you presets. Okay, yours will have different presets, and then it gives you all these things here. Which these things here, it's the stuff that you got to look up if you plan on doing this. Okay, you're new to this. We'll just go ahead and we'll just get compression, dynamics, compressor, mono, and then this pops up. Okay. They'll give you options based on instruments or voice type. Most of us will be doing voices. I have a lot of options here: narration, natural voice. So let's say natural voice. And then, a certain pop-up will come up and it'll affect the voice. This has been Lifeline with Mario DeSantis. So compression, I would suggest when you start, just find, the closest that matches your person, and then use that. Okay, and you will hear a noticeable difference. There are other buttons you can play with here. There's the output gain, which means it makes it louder. You have auto gain things. All these other things are things that are advanced. We're not going to talk about right now. Okay, but compression is pretty important if you want to move past just the basics. Okay, so compression, look it up. All right, Google it. The next thing we're going to talk about here is a limiter. And what a limiter does is essentially it prevents your audio from going above a certain threshold. Okay, so right now the gain is set at 0, but if I set it all the way down to like -8,
this has been Lifeline.
If you notice,
with Mario
all of a sudden it can't go past 8, -8. If you look down here,
this has been Lifeline with Mario DeSantis.
Okay, like you can go ridiculous with this. There's no reason you would do this, by the way, but
this has been Lifeline with Mario DeSantis.
Okay, so why do you want to do this? The reason you want to do this is so you can avoid going over the limit. You can, if you have somebody that is just, they pop certain words or whatever, something just keeps it just loud, it just keeps causing, or sometimes when you have a whole mix, the compounded audio can make the whole thing clip, and then you have to sit down there and listen and say, okay, what is causing the whole entire soundtrack to clip? And it could be something like, there's a car horn in the mix that when it's added to everything, all of a sudden the whole thing just blows up. Okay, when in music that happens more often, but your soundtrack probably wouldn't be as involved. You should be fine with 0.0. You usually do not want to try to go higher. Here's another example.
This has been Lifeline with Mario DeSantis.
Okay, you don't want to do that. You want to keep it as close to 0 as possible, unless it is something that you're like, I do not want it to be heard very much. And this is a very basic way of dealing with volume. It's called the limiter. It gives you an option here, I believe, to EQ, equalization. Okay. This has to do with frequencies. Everybody speaks at different frequencies. I'm pretty low for a girl, but a lot of girls are higher and stuff. Guys are lower. Machines are even lower. The rumble of an airplane is even lower. The hissing of a cymbal is extremely high. Whispering is high. The wind is higher usually. And so what this does is it kind of allows you to control what frequencies are emphasized. Okay, so I'm gonna go over here. This one actually has an automatic EQ. You can analyze, and so what's gonna happen is when I do playback,
This has been Lifeline with Mario DeSantis.
as you can see, there's nothing going on down here. I don't speak that low. I'm low for a girl. I'm in here. Usually most girls are a little bit higher. Okay, there's not much going on up here either. In fact, if you hear hissing, you just want to get rid of this stuff at the top. Okay, so you can get rid of that. Okay, so once again, if you're new to this stuff, just go over to, let's say vocal presence or whatever. Okay, you'll see what this means is that it's cutting out the low frequencies. It's emphasizing some of these higher frequencies for clarity. When you speak, your enunciation happens in this part. When you start getting rid of the higher frequencies, you lose enunciation. So this example here has vocal presence. Okay, so it'll make it a little.
This has been Lifeline with Mario DeSantis.
Let's say we go in and we add in the equalization again, but this time we'll analyze it again.
This has been Lifeline with
Okay.
Mario DeSantis.
So let's say I decide to do something like, you can manually do this. And I do that. Okay? Listen to it.
This has been Lifeline with Mario DeSantis.
So here it sounds muffled. Okay? Unless you want that sound, let's say you want to have it like it sounds like somebody's behind a door or they're talking through some sort of old-fashioned device. They're on the phone, they're talking through a speaker maybe or something. You want to avoid that. You want to try to cut the lower frequencies, usually 50 hertz and less you don't need, unless it's some sort of huge crash kind of thing. In that case, you need to listen to it in speakers with a sub audio and make sure you don't go too crazy on the rumble. I have a tendency to do that sometimes. So you can play with the pitch, okay? We'll do one more example with the pitch. In this case, we're going to play with the EQ again. Last time what I did was I cut the lows and the highs. And I ended up just with the middle part, which was very muffled, okay? This time, let's analyze it one more time.
This has been Lifeline with Mario DeSantis.
So this time what I'm going to do is I am just going to get rid of everything except for the very high highs, okay? All right, this means all of this is gone. It's disappeared, okay? The good thing with digital, you could bring it back if you want. And then we're just going to have this and hear what it sounds like.
This has been Lifeline with Mario DeSantis.
Okay, and there are times you might want that effect. It's kind of like a telephone effect almost. Okay, so that's called EQ. All right, last thing we're going to play with here is something very basic, pitch. All right, pitch is just high or low. Something is high or low. This is high.
This is low.
Okay, and when you mess with the pitch, you can do a lot of things. You can make a person's voice sound more childlike or more adult. You can change a man's voice to a female voice to a male voice, adults to children, children to adults. You can make aliens. You can make all kinds of craziness just with pitch. Chipmunks, you could do chipmunks. So there's not a lot of reasons why you need to use that unless it's for special effects. Great for cartoons, or if you're like the only person doing your voiceovers for whatever and you want to disguise your voice a tad bit. It is a bit obvious after a bit, which is why it works great with cartoons and comedies and things like that, and maybe not so great if it's a very serious drama. It might be really obvious that your voice is just the only voice being used. But you combine that with various accents and such, and, you know, all of a sudden one person can be several voice actors. And they do this all the time. The Chipmunks. Just watch any Chipmunk movie. Oh, pitch shifter. There it is. Duh. Okay. When you're looking at this one, okay, so let's just play with this, and we're going to go up an octave. 12 semitones is an octave. Sense is just the teeny tiny little changes there. This is how much is mixed in with it. We're going to go 100%. That thing is all mixed in there. We're not going to worry about a delay right now. Okay. A lot of these are a lot simpler on other programs because this is Logic. It's not. Okay, and then let's listen.
This has been Lifeline with Mario DeSantis.
Awesome. So we have created a chipmunk. Okay. All right. We'll do one more of these. Okay, just to show you the flip side. Okay. All right. All right. Semitones. We're going to go down an octave. Okay. We're going to mix it in all the, like maybe about right there. So it's mostly mixed in. We're going to keep the delay the same. Some of this stuff is more musical stuff that you won't have to worry about. Okay, we'll play.
This has been Lifeline with Maria DeSantis.
Okay, this is a great effect if you want like some sort of demonic voice. Okay, so this is a great way to do a special effect with just audio. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. Obviously, there's so much that I didn't cover, but I think that this is a pretty good basic tutorial on how to use some basic sound design and sound editing. Ideally, once you finish doing all your tracks, it should look, here's a little thingy that I'm working on right now. Whoops, not that one, this one. And you can see that there is a lot of, like just so much going on right here in the audio. And some of these are clipped purposely because they're supposed to be radio, so I distorted them purposely. There's just so much going on. But anyway, so, and ideally you will have multiple audio tracks. You will not have just one track. You'll have many, many, many tracks going on, to kind of make your sound design more believable and more authentic. And so just, if you need any help, just comment in the YouTube thing below, because I am going to put this up on YouTube. Or contact me on my Facebook page. And I guess that's about it. All right. So thank you. There. I really love eating pizza. Pizza is like the best stuff in the whole wide freaking universe. Pizza, 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 pizza. I love pizza.